Mystics. You know how sometimes when you find like a box of photos and you start looking through them and you think, oh my gosh, that's when we went through this thing and that's when we went through that and that's what led us to this place we are right now? That's what this conversation is today. It's a conversation that says, oh, that's how we got to this place. And it's really, really interesting. It takes a second to get set up, but I promise if you stay with us through the conversation, you will feel better when we're finished than when we started. Let's get started.
This is a production of Pioneer Dream, celebrating 30 years of moving stories for corporate, nonprofit, and entertainment partners. Please help us keep the conversation going by rating, liking, and subscribing to this podcast. Thank you. Also, make sure to check out our other podcasts, Hope for Humans, funny, usable conversations to help change the world around you, and Got a Minute Mini Podcast, presenting funny stories and independent music, all in about 15 minutes. Now, here's Jay and Anjanette Webster.
Mixed Up Mystics, what is up? You are back. We are back. We are here. Hello, Anjanette.
Hey, what's up, all you mystics? Good to see you guys.
Or hear you, or whatever
well,
it is.
I mean, in my mind's eye.
To feel your presence.
Yes,
We
glad
are
you're here.
thrilled that you're here. Today's a big conversation, fun conversation, but I'm so glad you're here for it. But before we get started.
Well, first off, let me just say that in case you already feel some extra magic and joy today, it's because in the podcast studio, we have a new candle. And it is very beautiful. It's just a small kind of white candle, but
it's
I like
almost reminiscent of the prayer candles we had at the Catholic Church.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Although we Baptists did not light candles.
I know.
I'm pretty sure
You
that
couldn't-
wasn't allowed.
You
I
couldn't
don't
do
know.
a physical thing like that.
Right, we couldn't do that. But no, I love it. I love the symbolism of it.
I love the candle thing because it does put in action with a spiritual thing, a
It
spiritual
does.
connection. And it kind of brings, and since we are both, we are spirits living in a material world.
Is that so?
Yeah. I love putting those things together. So it's really sweet
Yeah,
that way.
no, I didn't think that's why you brought it in.
No.
I thought it was just for ambiance, but
It
actually
is.
now that I see it,
It's both.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty good stuff. So anyway, carry on.
Listeners, if you're not driving, if you'd like to light a little candle too, you sure can. We'll all do this in a
If you are driving,
communion state.
don't do that.
No, it was hilarious. I was showing. There's a new documentary out right now called "Man on the Run," which is about Paul McCartney immediately after the Beatles, trying to figure out what he should do with himself after all that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it leads into forming a band called Wings.
Was your big fan?
Yeah, which I was a big fan of, and a big fan of. And then they did a tour, which was called
Wings in Flight?
Wings
No.
Over America.
Oh, Wings
But the
Over
name
America.
of the album
Yeah,
was
yeah.
Band on the Run, and it was huge. You know, it was a huge thing. And anyway, so they're showing in this documentary these stadiums and the huge crowds that
Oh,
came
man.
out for this, and it was a really significant thing.
And we know if there's a rockumentary that you're going to be watching it
watch
and
it,
asking
yeah.
us to watch it with you.
So at some moment, they do this wide shot of a stadium, and the concert's at night, and it's really brilliant and everything, and it just scads of light. And I said
Oh,
to
cool.
Evangeline, I said, "Those are lighters." And she said, "What?" And I said, because you're so used to now
Yeah,
seeing that
that's
same
people's
image with
phones.
people's
Yeah.
phones. And they just started waving their phones. And I said, "No, those are actual Bic lighters." Or
Yeah.
whatever Bray was.
She
people
was
were
like,
just holding
lighters
them.
for what? We were like,
Yeah.
cigarettes.
And it looked just the same. So that many people,
Wow.
you know,
Do you
either were.
suppose that many people smoked, or was it like you brought your lighter to the concert to be ready for the moment?
That's a mom question. We'll have to dial
Okay,
up mom
we'll have
and
to
ask
ask
her.
her. Yeah,
she was
that's
at a
good.
couple of those concerts, so we'll just have to ask
I like
her.
the segment, Phone Your Mom.
Phone your mom.
That's good.
Yeah.
Ask her. Yeah, your mom, big music fan. In fact, I credit her, your dad as well, for your
Yeah.
amazing music taste. Of course, you've,
Sure.
quaffed it yourself.
My mom gave me the Beatles and Led Zeppelin, and my dad gave me Bruce Springsteen, and so
Yeah.
it was a pretty
Chuck
well-rounded.
Mangione.
Yeah, jazz and all that
Like
kind
cool
of stuff.
stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, I digress.
So anyway, I don't know where we were going with that, but
I'm going to guess you were
I
going to
think
make
we
some
just
announcements. Like
spun off that from the candle. But
Yeah,
yeah, so
there you
the
go.
idea that Evangeline had never seen a sea of light in a stadium or auditorium and not known that to be anything but a cell phone.
Yeah.
And the fact that would actually be a lit flame that someone was holding.
So cool.
30,000 people with flames in the air.
Crazy. It's kind of
Yeah.
like when you think about Christmas twinkle lights.
Oh,
like,
my gosh.
people used to actually put
Just
candles
like,
on
yeah.
pine trees. It seems like a bad
I wonder how long it took someone to say that's probably not a good idea.
Probably when their house burned down.
Yeah.
They were like, let's not do
Well,
this.
and they wouldn't bring out the tree until like that night. So
That's true.
that
It
was a
didn't have
big
time
part
to
of
get so crispy.
Speaking of which, hey, we have had the best time the last couple of weeks doing our Dreamers Club in the Central Middle School, and we always invite you to listen to our other podcast, Hope for Humans. And if you go on there right now, you can hear 2 or 3 episodes we recorded with the Dreamers Club. You'll know that's what they are because it'll say CMS Central Middle School, CMS Dreamers Club, and then it would probably have the subject. So, talking about the future or talking about empathy, or we did one with an English class there with Miss Davis.
Shout out to Heather Davis. Let us come in and bring her kids in.
Yeah, talking about civil rights and all that kind of stuff. So really fantastic
It's
conversations.
pretty cool to hear the kids actually speak up on things.
Yeah.
And they're short episodes, but in case you kind of are worried about the future, just listen to these.
Yeah.
And you're going to hear these kids.
And the kids are funny.
They
and
are. Have some
thoughtful
really
and-
good insights.
yeah.
And it's sweet to me every time we do it, just how much they enjoy just being able to take some time and sit, have snacks, and talk. I mean, it's the simplest thing. And it's fun to listen to. So.
And I think there's something about the podcast format that encourages them to, maybe if they were just in a class scenario, they might not raise their hands, they might not talk. But with the podcast, it's like extra motivation.
They feel like they're part of something and they're contributing to something, which they are. So go listen.
And we bribe them with snacks, so that kind of helps too.
Yeah, candy bribes.
Speaking of bribing, we have a newsletter, The Dreamery, which gives you information on all things related to Dreamers. So it gives you information about the podcast that we do, the live events we do for Dreamers Live. If we do any service projects, there's bonus free music. There's bonus columns and writing and all kinds of material and stuff. So anyway, it's a great thing. It's digital. It's free. It just shows up in your email box once a month. We don't use your information for anything but that. So anyway, if you're not on our email newsletter list,
please get on it.
For the Dreamery, just message us with your email address and we'll put you on there. Lots of you have signed up when we've announced it on the podcast and stuff. So anyway, make sure you do that. Do it today while you're still thinking about it.
There you go. And lastly, real quick, for those of you guys that are in the area of the Ville, driving area of the Ville, we have our St. Patrick's theme, our St. Patty's weekend warm-up Dreamers Live this Friday. We would love to see you guys. It's going to be a fun time. Irish music, some good Irish beer and treats, a limerick or two. It'll be uplifting and fun. So come this Friday to the Pioneer Dream Loft. We'll be there from 5 to 7.
Just like the podcast, we promise that you'll definitely feel better when you leave than when you got there.
That's right, for sure.
Let me take you back to the late 1900s.
Okay.
To the 1990s. Mid-1990s, we had...
Did you say 1900s?
The 1900s, yeah. Let me take you back. And so let me just kind of paint this picture because I've been thinking about this today. And then I saw your dad this morning for a few minutes. We were at our daughter's band contest this morning.
Regional band contest.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So not very many parents there. They don't really advertise it, but you could sneak in and see it. And they did a great job at it.
They did.
So I saw your dad, and we were kind of talking about this concept. And it kind of stirred up some thoughts, and as I was thinking about it, so in the late 1900s, in the mid 1990s, 94, 95, 96,
I remember it well.
I think it kind of happened. So we had at that time one of the first kind of mega churches in our region, in our area, in our town for sure. And so we had a membership that was probably 500 to 600, maybe more. I don't remember.
Yeah, and given the population of our small city, it was a
big church.
A big church, yeah.
And we had a big building. It was actually in a shopping center that was not our own. It didn't look like a church. It was all very contemporary.
Right.
We had 12-foot ceilings and blacked out ceilings and TV screens and a big stage.
Some of the first ones to ever do lyrics, worship song lyrics on the screen.
We had a big stage with a rock band and all that kind of stuff. We had a coffee shop and a gift shop.
I'm pretty sure we were some of the first ones to ever have a coffee shop. All these things that are just normal now.
And, all that kind of stuff. And it was really it was a big deal.
Big operation.
And it was not unusual, based on what we were doing for our gatherings to go. 2 to 3 hours, depending on what was happening. And it was a big deal, and we put a lot of energy into it, and we had a really distinctive personality as a sort of non-denominational thing with casual clothing and
Yeah.
big music and all that kind of stuff. And right at that same time, there was a thing that some of you might remember, this thing that was called the Toronto Blessing or Outpouring or something like that. It's a huge deal where
Whoa, yeah, I hadn't thought about that in a while.
yeah, where it was, I don't know how you describe it now because it seems so odd because it was not,
Yeah.
even though we were kind of free form and all that kind of stuff and what some people would call kind of charismatic and all this was kind of on a different level.
Yeah.
And there would be this, what they would call this outpouring. So you could kind of tangibly feel the presence of God. And this is also weird to even talk about now.
It is
But
funny.
at the time, it was a really amazing experience. And
So a lot of people, well, explain to people, like a lot of people were actually like, okay, there was this one church that was in Toronto, Canada, where this kind of started happening.
not
and
planned for, not decided upon, just kind of just happened.
And then people would actually like sort of make pilgrimages
Yeah.
and travel there to experience a few days and go to those worship services and to get prayed for and that type of
But
thing.
it was distinctive because it felt like God was tangible, like you could feel him.
Yeah.
And then, you might respond. In some cases, you'd respond by crying because there was such intimacy to it. There was such personal connection to it. You couldn't kind of help be moved.
And you and I actually went twice.
Yeah.
We were part of like church
But
leadership
then it
at the
didn't
time.
stay in Toronto. It actually it kind of traveled down, especially through North
well,
America.
it turns out God doesn't have to be in a physical location.
Right. Yeah, so lots of people, especially in North America, ended up having that experience
Yeah.
and beyond. And people from all over the world would fly in to connect with this, and then they would take that experience back with them wherever they went.
Yeah.
And some people would even would laugh because there was this freedom to it. And a lot of people ended up having this experience where they had kind of like really deep healing, like it's stuff that would happen, if they had issues from their past and scars, emotional scars and all that kind of stuff, there would be this kind of deep healing stuff that would happen for people. And it was really significant and
Kind of amazing. It was like kind of like therapy,
yes.
except for it was quick and it was like sort of
Right.
God would do the work.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, I had some experiences that were pretty amazing just when people would pray for me.
Absolutely.
And when I think back about it, I mean, it seems weird to talk about it now.
Yeah. Well, I had this experience of being something that was happening across the continent, so happening to a lot of people, and that's what kind of drew everybody's attention to it. But what was happening was deeply personal for most of us. And so you were having this experience in a room, but whatever was happening, it was almost like it was tailored for you personally. And what you were hearing and what you were taking away in those experiences were, and so there was also this huge outpouring of creativity that came from that point.
Yes.
Lots of music and lots of art and all kinds of stuff.
That part was super cool.
Yeah.
It was
And
sort of
so-
like a spiritual renaissance.
Yeah. And so then that kind of begins to move on and kind of does its thing. And we find ourselves kind of at the end of the 1990s. And here we've kind of built this mega church experience and lots of music and all that kind of stuff. And then we start sensing or feeling like, okay, it feels like something's changing for us.
Yeah.
It feels like something's turning for us. And it wasn't intentional or decisive. We just, as we've always tried to do, we just tried to go with wherever the shine was and what it felt like was happening in the moment. And what felt like it was happening was, hey, this thing where you get all geared up for Sunday morning and you show up and we
Right.
camp out here for a couple hours and we do this whole
Big
big thing
and it's the
all that
focus
kind
of your
deal.
week.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It feels like we're not going to do as much of that anymore. Like it feels like the right thing to do is concentrate this a little bit. We might not meet on Sunday mornings anymore. We might try meeting on a Saturday night or a Friday night. We might try shortening the window when we meet and making it more focused or intentional. We might, this, and this.
Yeah. Well, and if I remember, I mean, and correct me if I don't remember it the right way, but that during the time of that, what people would refer to as like that outpouring
The
of God's
renewal or whatever,
presence or
yeah.
the renewal, that's right, was
Yeah.
another word that it was a lot of time that we would spend getting prayed for and, God sort of bringing healing and taking care of things in our own heart. And then I felt like we began to sense that the emphasis would start to be even more on other people,
Right.
doing something that
Yes.
would bring other people in, that was more palatable
Right.
for people who weren't part of church culture.
Yeah. We had built something, I think, for where we were, that was a little top heavy, that was a little consumer oriented, that was certainly focused on what we were doing in a
What we
corporate
were getting,
setting. In a
yeah.
corporate setting. And I remember we came in one particular Sunday, and there was this kind of clear indication, this clear message that we felt that God was saying,
This has been nice, but
I'm kind of jealous for the attention that this Sunday gathering is getting. I'm kind of jealous for all the focus and the energy and the emphasis and
Sure.
all this that you're pouring into this corporate thing, and it's gotten a little top heavy.
yeah.
And we didn't know it at the time, but that began for us what it has ended up being like a 20 plus year deconstruction for us.
Yeah.
And from that moment
Ooh,
on,
you just said a bad
I
buzzword.
know, from that moment on, this is what your dad and I were talking about this morning for a minute, was, okay, we had this sense, okay, this is changing. God is saying, I'm jealous for the institution of the church, of what you've created for
Yeah.
this. I wish that you were as zealous for me or as wanting for me as you are for this institution we've created.
Yeah.
Not just our small personal church body, but at large. It was a bigger thing than just us, but it did impact us directly.
Yeah.
And he was saying, I wish you were as intent on me or as absorbed with me as you are this thing.
Yeah.
And that started this kind of deconstructionist
Yeah.
ramp for us that we didn't recognize right away, but it has been continuous.
Yeah. As we look back on it.
Yeah.
What's so interesting about, so when I was growing up, we would have called something like that a revival, except for in the Baptist church, it was very structured. The revival can happen, but it's going to be on these dates. And we're going to bring in this minister, and it's going to this time. But you had to go to church every night. But
Right.
the idea behind it was, if you're looking at the positive motivation, was that we're going to take some time and really focus on God and just have a different kind of a week.
Right.
But, and then with the Toronto outpouring and that renewal and all of that, like so many things that begin in spiritual movements, God really is in them. I mean,
Right.
there are amazing things happening. But then as it continues on, it's sort of like, when you look at it, like God has kind of said, it feels like, okay, cool. That was really great, guys. Now we're going to head this direction. But as humans, we always want to camp out.
Right.
But why? I mean, this
Yeah.
was so great. Like, let's just keep doing this forever.
Yeah,
you
well,
know?
I do find that really, really interesting. That here we were, kind of trucking along. No one foresaw this thing, the Toronto blessing or the renewal or whatever it was. But it's interesting to me that right before God starts this process of deconstructing the church, of kind of dismantling a lot of stuff, of taking things apart.
Yeah, structure-wise.
He did this big outpouring, and in this big outpouring, there was, as we said, just a tremendous amount of emotional and spiritual healing and
Yeah.
renewal, and all of that. And like, I think your dad had a picture at the time. It's like if you look at it like a pitcher of water or whatever, and it's being held out maybe at arm's length or something like that, and then in the moment that God says yes, the pitcher kind of tilts a little bit and the contents of that pitcher begin to pour out, and it floods this area.
Yeah.
And then when his purposes in that are done, he says, okay, and then the hand kind of returns back to upright, and the outpouring at that level kind of quits. So you have this, historically, what I find interesting about it, you have this moment where God just pours himself out, becomes really tangible, visible, and all this in a lot of ways. And then from that moment on, this kind of deconstruction thing kind of starts, and the voice of God gets quieter and quieter and
Yeah.
quieter
Yeah.
and quieter. And that's where we are now 20 years later. So, and in that process, you go from this slow dismantling, which was gracious and kind, that didn't just happen. we begin to see the removal of a lot of things that we found personal comfort in or personal trust in and all that kind of stuff. So, like we've talked about even the last episode, just it was easy before that to kind of trust in this kind of formulaic doctrine.
Yeah.
I do this, then God does that.
Yeah.
I do this, then God does that. And we had this equation relationship with God. I obey God. God blesses me, pours out his blessing.
And this
X,
is
Y,
how
and
it
Z.
works.
And we do that. And then we have since discovered that in a lot of ways, when you set up a doctrine like that, you can get into a place where you can operate that doctrine without God.
Yeah.
You can set the formula like that.
And that can happen in a non-denominational church or the churches that really feel like they're free and we don't hold to this formula. And before you know it, you've got one.
Yeah.
And you think, what the heck?
Yeah.
So even like your super freedom can become
exactly
not free.
And that was part of it for us. We kind of reveled in this brand that we had for us.
Well,
as
who
a
would
church.
love it? I mean, you're getting prayer, like God's healing your heart. You're feeling pretty great, optimistic about life in the future.
Yeah.
And then, but then that becomes the thing.
Yeah.
And so then
that becomes your own doctrine.
And then often when leaders that are, I think, that are trying to follow the movement of God's Spirit or get a sense of where they start to pull away from that, and people say, hey, man, I love this stuff. This is what are you doing?
Well, and I think that in this dismantling or deconstruction or whatever phrase you want to use in it is painful at different levels as you go through this process. Now, early on, as I was saying to your dad, when we saw deconstructionism start, we saw the dismantling start. Well, in so many ways, that was right in line with the spirit of who we were as a church. We were used to seeing that kind of thing. So I don't think it was particularly painful for us at the time to see that or witness that happen. We just thought, this is what needs to happen. We already knew a lot of people trusted in their building projects and in the big church experience and all that kind of stuff. So seeing that happen. But as you go through, there are different things that we hold a certain level of comfort in.
Yeah, for sure.
A certain level of safety in. And so the dismantling thing can be really uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It can also be a little disorienting because, if I'm not the youth pastor or if I'm not in charge of this program or that program,
right.
What's my spiritual identity?
Exactly. And and if we don't come here for 45 minutes to an hour of worship music with a very long sermon and prayer after, even if it's good, then what are we even doing?
Well, if I'm not building consumer projects, for people and saying, hey, come over here and you can do this and you can earn that and you can go to that and it's all about you.
Yeah.
Then what am I selling people on?
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, and when you think about the outpouring of what we call the outpouring of God's Spirit, or like that pitcher coming down and us feeling that, and then as God, it felt like began to sort of lift that and it got quieter. What's interesting is we tend to think, God's not working anymore. I mean, we had this very tangible stuff that you could feel, that you could experience. And then when it gets quiet, there are two choices. You can trust that God is working in the quiet for other purposes, perhaps to reach other people. Or you can say, well, we've missed it. We were in this and now we've decided it's not here anymore. And I mean, it can
rock your world.
Yeah, it definitely
and it
can.
has.
Because as humans, whether we're Christians or not, or believers or not, or have faith or not, we get used to stuff and we like it. And we like it that way.
Yeah. So I think you've seen a lot of people, that we were in a relationship with 20 and 25 years ago.
Oh, dude, would you say half of them aren't even
maybe more
walking with God?
Yeah, they don't. They would, they might still call themselves Christians, though they're not practicing in any way. They're not necessarily a part of any body group or anything like that.
And I love a lot of those people. I don't mean it judgmentally, but it's very interesting to me. A lot of the people who were critical, and that happens because we all do that. Maybe left to go to a different body or a different church. Right. But so many of them, after they moved around a couple more times, just quit.
Yes.
Just quit, walking with God.
Well, they very much fell in love with the formula. So as the dismantling began and we started saying, I don't think we're going to do music in the same, it doesn't feel right to keep doing this. It feels like, it's like the band that ends up having to become the greatest hits band. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with it, but it felt like people were really in love with that formula. And so when we said it doesn't feel like That's right for us right now. It feels
Yeah.
like we're going to start toning this down. It feels like we're going to de-emphasize these things over here and put an emphasis over here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that became really disorienting for a lot of people. This is how I know God. This is what I like. And so
Yeah.
that dismantling, and I think all dismantling at some level is uncomfortable. And what you're so right. And as that deconstruction started and we got further from the renewal moment and the Toronto blessing moment and all that kind of stuff, and this dismantling began, and you went from this high intensity, tangible experience
Right.
to an experience that was made even more stark because you had just left this high.
Yeah.
So, had we not had the Toronto thing and that experience, maybe it wouldn't have felt so stark, but now
Yeah.
it feels very stark, and you start thinking, what's happening? Why is God going away?
Yeah.
Why is this, and there's not the glow on all the things you used to do
Sure.
before.
It very much reminds me of the story of, was it Elijah, the prophet?
I don't know. Tell me and I'll tell you the story.
Well, I'll let you know. I know my prophets. No, I'm kidding. I think it's funny because I get mixed up between Elijah and Elisha. I think it was Elijah, though. Anyway, just one letter difference, guys.
Sure.
Anyway, he was in a cave and hiding out from God. And what was interesting was, if I remember this correctly, and if I don't, y'all just forgive me.
Right.
But there had been like a big move of God or
Yeah.
a big miracle that he had been part of to help lead. And all of this happened, and it was this huge, very tangible thing that lots of people saw, and he was at the helm of the leadership for this. And then afterwards, he ends up just hiding.
Yeah.
in a
He has to go on the run. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. He has to go
Yeah.
on the run. So it was very loud and it was very visible. And then he's just stuck in this cave. And so he's looking.
Wondering if God is real again.
Exactly. Which is
You
so.
were just a week ago.
It was so funny because
you were lighting
it was like, dude, you're
logs on
like
fire.
in
Yeah.
charge of this whole thing. But isn't that true for
Yeah,
those of us who've been in
man.
charge of things at any level?
Yeah.
You can be at the top of the mountain and be like, yeah. And then the next day you're like, is there a God? Are you
Right.
there, man? That's all of us wonder about that. We have tough times. And so anyway, he's in this cave and he said, I was looking for you, God. I was waiting for you in this cave to be reminded that you're even still there. And it wasn't in the fire.
Yeah.
And I was waiting for you, God, and it wasn't in the loud wind. And I was waiting for you, God, and it was in the still,
Right.
small voice.
Yes.
And I love that. That's where we get that phrase, the
Right.
still small voice. So it was difficult to come from the loud wind and the big fire
Right.
and all of that excitement and tangibility. Is
And
that a
earth,
word?
wind, and fire.
It was
actually.
Earth, Wind, and Fire, yes.
They've been
And
around that
then-
long.
Yeah, and so it gets quieter and quieter, and we're in the cave.
Yeah.
And is God still there? Yeah.
Right.
But you have to get real quiet to find him.
Well, that also reminds me of
It's much less showy.
Moses. And he's there. He's got the he's rescued as part of God's rescue plan. He's rescued the Israelites from enslavement with the Egyptians, and they've been forced out into the desert, and they're wandering around the desert. And at some moment, Moses has been called upon to be the intercessor between the people and God. So that the people
Yeah,
are
the
people are
go-between.
afraid of God.
Yeah.
And they say, "You go talk to God for us. You go up on the mountain."
Yeah.
You do. And they didn't. They were too afraid to hear the voice of God, to be with God, and they made Moses kind of be this intercessor.
Yeah.
So Moses goes up on the mountain to hear from God and say, "What do you want to do with these people?
Yeah.
How are we going to rescue
He
these
was
people?"
the mediator,
Right.
like a current
And
term.
when he comes down, he's been kind of face to face with God. And there is such an intense physical glow about him,
Yeah.
having seen God and been with God, that they literally have to put a veil over him because it's
was
just too much to
glowing.
look out. It's
Yeah.
just too much to look upon.
His countenance was
And
glowing.
then this time kind of starts to go along, and no one's doing anything wrong. No one's disobeying. Moses is still the same guy, but the glow begins to fade.
Which doesn't mean that Moses did anything wrong.
But he has to keep the veil on.
Yeah.
Because if he takes the veil on, they're going to say, "Oh,
off. Yeah.
glow
The
is
glow's
less than
gone. Are we doing the right
Yeah, what
thing?
happened? Are you not hearing God's voice anymore? Are you not
Yeah.
with God anymore because the glow's gone?
So poor Moses, he just like keeps the veil
So
on.
he just has to keep the charade
Yeah.
up. He has to
Oh.
keep the veil up the whole time.
And that is so tough. And don't
Yeah.
we all know it?
But
Like,
that's kind of what happened. So
Yeah.
we had this outpouring, we had this experience, we had this thing.
It was awesome.
And then God says, okay, great. Now we're going to go into this desert. This has been great. I've shown up. I've revealed who I am to you. Now you're going to go into this desert thing. And now I've got to dismantle things. Like I think we talked about, maybe in the last of this whole concept of even pruning and cutting and taking away. He says, now that you're healthy, now that I've done this for you, I'm going to have to go in and start removing
And cut some things away.
And if
Yeah.
you've ever had to have a surgery like that before, you know, that's half the battle is getting yourself healthy enough in order to have the surgery, you know, and to have that place. So
Yeah.
here it is. God pours himself out. It's this biggest thing in a generation, you know, what they would call like the 100-year renewal kind of thing.
Right.
And they, you know, I remember when it happened in Toronto, that people were going back and saying, you know, last time this happened, it was like in San Francisco. And then you went back and
I
it
think
was
it
like
was called like the Great Awakening or something.
and
Yeah.
it was tremendous. And
Yeah.
it was like, but it was like a 100-year thing.
Interesting.
And so here we are, and all that happens right before God says, okay, great, I'm going to start dismantling things now. I'm going to start taking all this apart now.
Yeah.
And it's really, really interesting. And so as this dismantling has happened over 20 plus years, there have been a lot of people who have said, wait, no, here's the fire. It is in the fire.
Yeah.
But it wasn't in the
Yeah.
fire. And here's this big wind. No, it's over here. And some of us have even tried to generate wind. And we've tried to generate fire.
Yeah.
And we've tried to generate movements.
We've got
and
our
things.
Bic lighters.
And we're trying to keep the dismantling from happening, the deconstruction from happening.
Well,
and
it's
say,
no fun.
no, it's still here.
Yeah.
And the whole time it has not been in the
Yeah.
fire or the wind or the reconstruction or the disconstruction or whatever.
Yeah.
It has been this thing. And so it has gotten, for a lot of us, you know, in the big dismantling, there was a lot to work with. There was a lot of pieces. You know, if you have a brush pile or whatever, you start removing the big limbs around the sides, it doesn't really affect much. But as it gets smaller, the impact is a lot bigger.
You feel the cut.
So here we are now, 20 plus years in the dismantling, and maybe the voice of God is even a little bit more quiet, and you have to be a little bit more attuned to hearing it, to listening. You have to get even more still, and you have to really kind of dial in and get quiet in that moment, and be attentive to where it's going and what it's saying and what it's doing. And some of this dismantling that is continuing to happen is, for many of us, maybe even a little bit more painful than it was at the beginning 25 years ago, because there's just not as much to work with. In weight loss, we talk about this a lot.
Yeah. It's easier when you're larger.
Losing the first 5 or 10
Yeah,
pounds
that's
is not
easy.
that hard.
Trust me, I know.
Losing the last 5 pounds,
Near impossible.
that is the part that takes diligence. That's the part that takes focus. That's
And loyalty.
the part that takes patience, and not losing heart or losing mind because it's just so difficult or whatever. So the things that happen towards the end of this process, which God help us, please let this be close to the end of this process, those things are even more difficult,
Yeah.
even more honest, even more naked. You think this is as naked as you can get. You think this is as honest as you can be.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself saying, no, there's still some layers here.
Yeah.
There's still some things that I probably that I'm trusting in that just are not it.
Yeah.
That still have to get removed. And as we said, I think in the last episode,
Mm-hmm.
the key of this, or the directive of this, or the focus of this, is that it continues to get back down to just Jesus
Yeah.
and this intimacy that's required. And that has always been the goal. Will you just come and be with me? Will you
Yeah.
come and seek me and not the formula? Will you seek me and not even just the scriptures? Will you seek me and be with me? And
Yeah.
that being with me and that intimacy, as we talked about last episode, isn't necessarily just a solo, alone, get with your own thoughts moment. That intimacy is happening in small gatherings. That intimacy is happening in different places. But to me, that is the focus, and the goal is the periphery, let's strip this back. Let's strip all of it away. Anything that is not the person of Jesus, let's strip that way, way back.
Yeah.
And then we're going to get there.
It reminds me of when, for those of you who have ever, dated someone and fallen in love and had that whole experience, when you first start out in a relationship with somebody, there are romantic gestures and you're, want to be with each other all the time. And, you're getting people flowers and you're writing poems and all these, and it's very tangible.
We do a lot of that still.
Of course, this is not a referendum on your romance level. You're quite good at that. But no, but it's very tangible and it feels great. And it's like, oh my God, I'm so in love, blah, blah, Yes. So that to me is kind of like that experience. It was a time of that. Mm-hmm. What's interesting about that, though, is as time goes on, that gets quieter. I mean, we've been together a really long time now, and it's a different kind of intimacy or closeness to me that is actually deeper.
Yes.
I can see you across a room in one slight look, and I know what you're thinking.
Right.
And that's the difference. I don't need you to say, I was really sad, and so I want to take you out on a date Friday or whatever it is. It's the point is I know you well enough to know that. But it does require a tuning in, but it ends up being more of a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. It's something that starts out really bold and very there and touchy-feely, and it gets deeper. And so if we can hang in there, in our relationship with God and our friendship with Jesus and let him strip it back to the simplicity, my hope is that there's a closeness and intimacy in that friendship that waits at the end. That would be the reward. Yeah. I mean, what do you see the good?
There's two really beautiful things that you said in there, I think, that are really important. The first thing I think about is the person in this deconstruction period that is like the person in love. Mm-hmm. And when things, as they naturally will, kind of settle into this thing, and what in the kind of not fabricated, but the kind of I don't know what the right phrase is. This periphery stuff that we do with the gestures and all that kind of stuff, which are sort of celebrations of where we are right now, but they're all kind of this external out here kind of thing. Yeah. And then the thing that we have now, which is a deeper intimacy and knowing, which is kind of what deconstruction does. So there are people that got spooked in the early periods of deconstruction thinking, because this piece is being removed or because this gesture is being taken away, what I thought of, what I believed in is not real. And so this term we would call falling away, to use a 1990s term, is happened. And that's the sadness of it. Yeah. Because in the deconstruction moment when these periphery things were being peeled back, and the voice of God got quieter, they believed what they believed in wasn't real. Yeah. Didn't exist.
That's so true.
That is the heartbreaking, sad part of that thing.
It is. And that would be just like, if as life goes on, if you don't have time for the Friday night dates and you don't have the money for the roses and you don't have the 9 hours for the long talks or whatever, that you would say, well, I guess he doesn't love me anymore. When the truth is that shifted.
If you can't do the big music, if you can't do the programs, if you can't do this and you can't do that, then are you still left with something? And that's, we talked about that maybe 3 or 4 episodes ago about what would it take for you to cash in. So like we said, in the moment, if you discover tomorrow there was no virgin birth, that mythology was there. That was really just an illustration or a picture or something like that. Is that enough for you to say, well, if that's not real,
then I'm out.
I'm out.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in deconstruction. For a lot of us, people said, well, if it's not that, well, if the formula or the equation doesn't work, I do this and you do that. Yeah. If I donate this money and then I always have prosperity, I donate this and then I always have enough money, and then your electric gets shut off for the first time. Yeah. And you think, oh, well, that formula doesn't work. I guess I don't have God anymore.
Yeah.
So in this deconstruction process worldwide, we have seen a lot of that, and people did fall out. And then there was the deconstruction of pulling back the church culture. So we were confusing the culture of church with the practice of Christianity.
Yeah, that's
or
tricky.
The spirit of religion.
Those
which
are really
was,
interwoven.
They were. And so as that began to have some holes in it, then we were left saying, I don't know. And then so in that, peeling that back, we said, well, the church culture is saying that we can't accept homosexuals. The church culture is saying we can't accept this. So the church culture is saying I have to belong to this political party.
Right.
And that starts to get stripped back from us a little bit. And we're thinking now we're confusing the church culture with the person of Jesus and saying
further muddies the water.
So the church culture was failing and the church culture was being pulled back. But we were confusing that with the person of Jesus in the process. So there was a lot of falling away.
Yeah. And I think about the scripture, it's really just a visual image that I really love when it talks about how friendship with God is the pearl of great price. So that is the thing that we're after.
Yes.
And as we have been willing to be open to, deconstruction or reinvention, or really just trying to be open to hear and understand what God may be doing now, it's hard because you can feel alone.
Yeah.
But there is a closeness. And if my pearl of great price is the friendship that I have with God and the relationship that I've had with Jesus my whole life, then it's going to be safe.
Yeah.
And I'd like to believe that in a way it's deeper, just like I feel closer to you now, even though, I miss the gestures. No, I'm kidding. But my point is, that should be the love that we have has been through more tough times, and because of that, it's deeper and it's more beautiful. Do you feel like that's on the other side of people can hang in? And also,
yes, absolutely. But here's the other
how
thing
can we hang in?
Here's the other thing that you alluded to, which I think is a really, really important thing in this. If you have a back history with God, if you have an intimacy with God in some level, I think the thing you alluded to, which is really critical here, is that the one who is deconstructing, the one who is in this process, the one who is pruning, can be trusted. Yeah. Can be trusted. And so we've said all along, okay, so say you wanted to turn your back, say you want to fall away, say you get to a place and this disconstruction and this dismantling is too much for us. Well, I would have to turn my back on 35 years of these experiences, 35 years of feeling him, hearing him, being healed by him, all the personal moments and meditation and all that, all of the lights on insight and understanding and moments where my life is now versus where it started. All these amazing experiences. I would have to turn my back on those and say those didn't happen. That's not real.
Well, and that's
but having gone through that and having this relationship with him and all that kind of stuff now, and I'm just now thinking about this as you said it, but just now I can think to myself, even as that voice has gotten more and more quiet, I'm thinking, but the one who's doing this can be trusted. Yeah. I'm also hearing Sally's voice.
What? Sally from Charlie Brown?
Linus knows what he's doing. Linus knows what he's doing.
And then my favorite part of that scene is, and then she looks at Linus, she goes, all right, where is he?
Yeah.
It's a great pumpkin. But that's the thing.
And I'm also thinking about, and I think we referenced this very verse last time we were together, which was the wounds of a friend can be trusted.
Well, and in God's goodness, He gave us, we have had the good times where we've really been able to feel His presence. And those of you who are listening have too. You have had those moments, and those are like a store inside of us that we can go to and remember God's faithfulness in our life here and when his presence was tangible. And I think that can help us in the quiet.
Yes.
Just like there are times where, as a married couple, we wanted to karate chop each other or this and that. But you know what I do have with you is I remember what you were like in high school.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at you and what an amazing person you were and are.
Oh, stop.
Oh, quit. Yeah. But I mean, that's, and I hate to, it's definitely not about us. Although I do think it's interesting that like when Paul talks in the New Testament, he talks about marriage and he talks about our relationship with God and how they can be intertwined. It's just a beautiful picture of it. Right. But because we had those romantic times or those times where we really fell in love, that's not something that you forget. That's something that you can recall when it's 25 years later and you're thinking you want to split wait, I remember this person. And it's the same. That's why God puts that like wellspring or that collection of goodness or those times where we did feel him tangibly in our hearts and we have those to remember.
Absolutely.
And that's why, God talks about building monuments,
right?
Which I love that idea. Hey, remember when God rescued us from that?
Right.
And you got that diagnosis and you thought you were done, but you're here.
Right.
Do you remember when we really felt God in this situation? Yeah. And so those are things that we can recall. But what I'm curious about is for people that are listening and relate to this, and this might be a cool conversation actually to bring in a reverend on to have my dad. Yeah.
I broached that with him today. So
Yeah, good. Because this could be a good part 2 on this. But what do we do? What do you say to encourage people that relate with this? But what do we do in the quiet? How do we let the pruning happen and remain in him?
Well, all I can do is tell you what we're doing or what I'm doing, and you can comment as well. But I think not quitting is the important part of it. So
that's the main thing.
I have figured out for me or for where we are right now that it is about being in tune and attuned to what he is saying and doing. It's about trusting in that. And so I get up every morning, I connect, I choose to stay in that, I choose to not let go of that, I choose to continue to guard my heart and keep it soft. And I have realized in trying to be sensitive to what he's saying and doing in the moment that there is this connection with him when I'm alone. But for whatever reason, he seems to be directing his presence to these small gatherings a lot.
Yeah, that's cool.
So these 2, 3, 4, 5 people, and the conversation breaks out. And it's almost as if he is saying, I love being with you. I'm going to be at this house tonight. Why don't you come hang out with me?
I was here in the big and I'm here in the small.
Yeah. And so for whatever reason, it may not always be this way, but for whatever reason, this thing of being with the intimacy is being intimate in gatherings, in small gatherings. And I really find myself in these conversations with 1, 2, or 3 other people. That's where I'm finding the most connection.
Yeah.
And that feeds me. That helps me because otherwise I'm left to think, well, there's something wrong with me or I made this thing up or this isn't real or whatever.
This idea, this American cultural idea, which I think is been exacerbated since COVID, of being like a spiritual Lone Ranger.
Right.
Like you can just be out there. Listen, I'm just going to watch I'm listening to my favorite spiritual podcasts. I mean, we don't want you to only listen to us. I mean, this is
But if you're only going to listen to one podcast.
I mean, this would be it, obviously. But no, my point is I'm just going to watch church online.
Right.
And just isolate and, everyone else has offended me or I've been hurt by this person or that or I don't feel God in the structure like I used to. And then so you just pull out. That's not how believing in God was designed. It is about community.
Right.
And so that's what I would say to encourage people. It sounds neat just to be able to watch church online and keep those principles in front of you, but we need each other. And if God is in those small gatherings and groups, you got to find one.
I think the other thing we can do...
Or make one like we did.
I think the other thing you can do, and this is not a greatest hits thing or the good old days thing or any of that kind of stuff, but I think remembering the moments when you've experienced God, remembering the things that God has done for you, remembering your experiences with God, maybe the first time you felt like you were fully loved or the first time you knew that you were okay or all those kinds of experiences.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like what they would do in the Old Testament where God would show up in a big way or come through and do something, and you would build a monument.
Yes.
You say, okay,
I love the monuments.
So every time you come back to the monument, go, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We were
You walk
starving
past
and
it.
God did this.
Yeah.
Or, oh, my gosh, we were under siege and God did this. Or I was really under it and I almost lost it, whatever, and God did this. So those things are things you do because they encourage you and they remind you of truth and they help you stay on focus and they help you not lose sight or lose hope of things. And so remembering, as David would say, laying on your bed and thinking and recounting the goodness of God.
Yeah.
Oh, man, this, that, and the other. Yeah, that was amazing. And that will reinforce things. It's not a greatest hits thing. It's not going back to the good old days.
Right.
But it is remembering that, oh, well, he was there with me then. He's here with me now. It's going to be okay. Don't get weird.
Don't get weird. I love it. Yes, and a lot of times the monuments, in the Old Testament, right, they were physical. So it'd be like, oh, on the River Jordan, we crossed here. And so we're going to build this monument so that every time we pass this river, we're like, oh, that's where God rescued us.
Yes.
I think in our lives, it's as simple as looking around us. Like a good example of a monument for me is our daughter. That's a huge one, right? But the point is, there was a time where I was praying that God would allow us to have her. Mm-hmm. And here she is every day. And those are monuments.
Yes.
When you look, so we remember the goodness of God in our life. And I think that helps us in the quiet. And also, I think, just to encourage people that if God is being quiet and speaking in the still small voice, and that's where he is, then we have to get quiet enough to hear him.
Yeah.
And it's never been harder.
We can't fear the quiet.
Yeah.
And
it's never been harder.
Yeah. And sometimes it does take some help, learning to be quiet, learning to be still, learning to wait on an answer and not fill in the answer ourselves.
Oh, man, that's tough.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That takes some spiritual maturity, and sometimes it takes some help from us and other people. Sometimes you have to do, guided meditations or guided experiences where you can be in a room together, but still be doing, I think we talked about a sound bath thing that happened a while back, which was really amazing.
Yeah.
But it was guided. It was an intentional thing. And even though it was really deeply, intimate and personal, it was also a communal experience.
Yeah,
and so,
it's interesting.
Some of those things we can do together. So if that's a retreat for you and a trusted resource or, that kind of thing, that all makes sense. But
it does.
I think the other thing
Forced
is that,
quietude.
And it's difficult, but we still hold these things to be true, that if we seek him, we will find him. If we ask, he will answer. But I think we have to, essentially trust the process.
Yeah.
We are in this season. This is a season of deconstruction. This is a season of dismantling. You're not alone. Everybody's going through this experience this way. And it is this great pulling back and this great cutting back of things. And so just know that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
And so that should brace us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there are these steps we can take in the meanwhile to make ourselves work out in the process.
Yeah. Well, and I will say, largely the reason that we do this podcast is because we'd like to have these conversations, but more so we need to have these conversations.
Absolutely.
We did this because I feel like we are oftentimes spiritually at sort of the front end of things. And that doesn't mean like, oh, you're so spiritually at the front end. It's more like because we're kind of geared for change and we tend to like to pioneer things and to be on that adventure. It's sort of how our personalities are. And of course, my dad is a leader and there are others of you like that. You are open-minded, you are open-hearted, and you are open. I think God can use those of you who are like that. But we had these conversations because it's tough right now to hang in, and we need each other. And so this is not a surrogate for actual community, but these conversations are to help other people, like Elijah, are hiding in the caves right now.
Well, and this is also the benefit of having been in this relationship and this connection for a length of time. So it's only now that I can look back over my shoulder and see the path that we've been on and say, that's what's been happening this whole time.
Like you look back, you see the clearing.
I thought I can remember having a distinct thought 4 years after this renewal thing, thinking, I wonder when this season is going to let up. this season of quiet because it felt like God was so starkly quiet.
Yes.
4 years into it, and it's been that way every year since then, and quieter and quieter. Like the decibels have been on a slow ramp down, fade down since then. But it's only now, it's, as the U2 lyric says, it's not a hill, it's a mountain when you start out to climb. And so now we are, whatever place we are on this mountain, and I can look back on the path that we've been on and say, oh, this makes so much more sense now. In the midst of it, I couldn't tell you where we were. I couldn't see what was happening. But now that we've been here, I can see from a historic standpoint, this has been happening this whole time.
Yeah.
And that's really encouraging in this process to say, okay, this makes sense now. This is where we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like your dad would say when we were on mile 18 of a long run training for marathon stuff. He'd say, it's supposed to hurt right now.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be tired right now. It's supposed to be difficult. This is all what it is supposed to be right now.
But you will crest that hill.
But you will. So if you're feeling these things, if it feels like you can't find God, if it feels like his voice is gone from you, if it feels like you're separated from his presence, I just want you to know it's kind of supposed to feel that way right this moment.
And you haven't done anything wrong.
No.
It's not. We tend to think that.
But don't give up in the process.
Yeah, don't give up. I mean, that's it. We tend to think when God's quiet that we've done something wrong to alienate him.
That's what it reminds me of too.
Yeah,
sure.
but I feel like, we're in the season, so we'll hang together,
Mystics, this has been great. It's been a lot. It's a whole lot of conversation.
That was a deep talk.
This is the conversation you might have to listen to once or twice to kind of fully get it.
Yeah,
but anyway,
if you relate with this, though, send us a message.
Yeah.
Have this. Send this one to a friend that you feel like would be open to it, and get together and talk about it. It's good. It's tough stuff, but it's good stuff.
And maybe next time we get together, we'll do the Ask a Pastor.
Yes. Ask a Reverend.
We'll get your dad's response on deconstruction.
Yeah, he's seen a lot in his lifetime.
Yes, he has.
Yeah. It'd be interesting
Mystics,
to hear.
we love having these conversations with you. We love you. And thanks for being a part of this. And we can't wait to get back together and do it again soon.
Yes.
Peace out.
We shall see you soon.
Thanks for listening. Please like, subscribe, and share this episode. And remember, continue this conversation with someone you know. This is Pioneer Dream.